Welcome everyone to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and with me for an exciting topic is Joe Brennan. Welcome,
Hello.
Joe. Welcome to What the Force.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's exciting.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. I'm excited.
Yes. Okay, but we are going to talk about future, past of the Star Wars galaxy and sort of some speculation, but more importantly, what we feel is really important to the story to kind of fix it. I'm just going to be blunt. I feel like it's a little broken right now, and there's a few reasons, and maybe we'll dig into those a little bit about what we see. And you came to my attention because you did this tour de force Reylo video, the best couple in Star Wars, which is hello. You really put a line in the sand out there. Challenge to all comers.
Yes, I felt that was a good balance of clickbait. And also, I was hoping I would deliver on that of just get people angry if they disagree and get people excited if they agree. So I thought that was a very grabbing.
Yes, you definitely decided to draw a line in the sand and say, "Hey, couple! Hey, there's a couple in Star Wars. How dare!" And then also the best. What?
Big words. Yeah, I thought that was important because I know most people who speak about Reylo and look the way I do, don't do it in the most the nicest way. And I think I was hoping to just straight away start the video by being like, I like Reylo, I like these guys, I think they should kiss, I'm glad that they kissed, I'm on your side, let's get into the video, rather than kind of a delayed kind of drum roll. What's he going to say?
I've been watching this video for 25 minutes and I can't tell if he's a Reylo or not. No. And I'm very similar in my approach for some of my podcasts. I'm like, this is my position. I'm talking about Star Wars from a woman's perspective because I'm a woman and I feel like it needs to be talked more about from that perspective. And you know what? You're right. You're right about so much of your video. It was very validating for people who saw Reylo and saw what it was trying to do and how it succeeded in so many ways. And then also how the creators sort of tried to ignore it in some ways. And so that in and of itself was super validating. But let's rewind a little bit. How did you get into deciding to yell about Reylo on the internet and then get everybody's attention and approach content? Because it is a wacky thing to be like, I'm going to talk about fiction. You know what? All the time.
Yeah, I don't really know how I've ended up here. I think it's one of those things that I feel like has just happened to me rather than kind of I sort it out. I guess I used to just write kind of little blog posts on my school blog and do little reviews. And I started really enjoying the writing side of things and the analysis. And it wasn't that good, but I thought I liked how I wrote in the kind of the style. And I felt like I was almost capturing my speaking voice with writing. And I was like, oh, actually, why can't I just say this? Why can't I just take these articles and turn them into scripts? Because they are essentially, how I would say it. Last year, started talking about Doctor Who and then kind of plucked up the courage to talk about Star Wars, which is my main thing. Very soon after I started talking about Star Wars, I knew I wanted to talk about Reylo because I think I'd spent some time on Twitter and I'd seen just a lot of stuff I disagreed with and a lot of stuff that I felt I agreed with, but kind of wasn't escaping Reylo spaces. So it was, I think it's a very, as I say in the video, a very insular fandom within Star Wars. And I thought it would be nice to kind of not necessarily represent that group, but at least explain, the fandom a little bit and the history of it. And the idea that, this couple, this romantic pairing came out of nowhere when they kissed in Rise of Skywalker. I think I had someone in a reply to my tweet just be like, oh, what do you think about Reylo? That kiss that came out of nowhere. I was like, oh, I really need to make a video about this because it did not. And I think, maybe spite is what drove me a lot of the way, but also love of the pairing.
I I think that's sometimes some of the reasons why we do the things we do, either tweet threads or like anger, because it's like, this has been fairly obvious to so many people. I remember getting out of The Force Awakens. Actually, I saw it in Mexico in an empty theater. Oddly, I was like on vacation there and like saw it in an empty theater with just my family. And I came home or got back to the internet and I immediately looked up the pairing because I could see it right away in The Force Awakens, and went to AO3 and went to fanfiction.net. And there was already like day one, after the movie came out, there was already short fics already starting. Yeah. So it's not like it was weird, and many women just plugged into it, or many people who also really just got it from a trope perspective too, because it does plug into fairly common genre tropes in romantic pairings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was, I mean, I think I always knew that Reylo had been a thing. I kind of jumped on board the train in The Last Jedi era. But looking back and doing research for the video and finding these fan fictions from December 2015, just like, oh, you know, this was a couple of days after the film came out. This is crazy. You know, it seemed to just suddenly exist and almost stay the same for the next 6 years as this kind of powerful, you know, community within Star Wars. I thought that was really cool to see the evolution.
You know, I'm friends with quite a few people who actually do social media listening and can understand the sort of the analytics behind how popular things are. And just before The Rise of Skywalker, Reylo as a group of people on the internet was the 5th most populous group on the internet.
Wow.
Just before The Rise of Skywalker. And we have multiple published authors who are Reylos that have published things that are in that stream, including as Ali Hazelwood, who has just published The Love Hypothesis, and like that is now a New York Times bestseller. So it's like, it's weird for me to be like, this is like an edge case. It's not. It's actually super mainstream. It's just ignored for some reason. And I know what that reason is. It's misogyny. It's fine.
Yeah,
but, you know, you know, I don't talk about it anymore because like, what is there to talk about other than, you know, oh, everybody's sad about it, or, you know, it's still so good even if people are sad about it. So it's kind of like solidified where it is right now. There's nothing changing except when Star Wars decides to drop new content, like Ben Solo being in a Lego Star Wars horror. Like, you know, like, because they know these characters are super popular and it'll pull people in.
Yeah. It's I think I watched the Ben Solo thing yesterday, and I was like, oh, I remember seeing content with this character. That's nice. But it was I think making my video when I did 2 years after Rise of Skywalker and just the dust had kind of settled, it gave me a kind of nice perspective of the whole story, I guess, of the whole the evolution from when it started, and just to kind of look. Not necessarily objectively, because I definitely have my own biases, and I think they very much show in the video, and that's not a bad thing. But to kind of look holistically at the whole thing and comprehensively, and I was really excited to do that, and I've been making notes about that since like April this year, and shaping the video in my head and in notes, and kind of eventually cracking down and being like, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna do this, and you know, it ended up being nearly 15,000 words, which is
you wrote a good essay. Good job.
Yeah. I'm gonna hand that in for my university dissertation.
Here's my thesis. What's super fascinating as well is that like this has also gone into academic circles. Reylo has been used for people's theses. Reylo's been used for fandom studies. It far extends what people want to acknowledge that it exists for. I do want to say that your approach to it was almost biased reporter. And I think that like, cause even you stood there with your microphone and we're recording just yourself just talking, and it it was just sort of wonderful just to have it plainly laid out in front of people.
I think I enjoyed the kind of tone that I developed with it, and the fact that I was kind of simultaneously doing like fact and then almost every sentence interjecting a bit of kind of personal commentary on it, and often quite I don't know, sassy. I don't consider myself sassy, but I can't think of the just sardonic. Maybe is the better, more kind of more me version of that. But I think I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm not usually happy with the stuff I put out there. Usually, I'm as soon as it is released, I want it back, and I want to edit it, and I want to change it. But with this, I like the video.
All right, Joe. Thinking about this topic for so long, I'm sure you have also thought about how do we get ourselves out of this mess? And maybe we should discuss the mess that we're currently into.
Yes,
let's define the mess, because I don't even know if Star Wars was really super aware. Like, the people who create Star Wars are super aware of the mess that they're in. Are you aware of the mess that you're in, creators? Like, I really want to know. Okay.
It doesn't feel like it. It definitely
No,
like
because they keep on doing the same things. And this comes from a place, like, I reached out, I wrote, like, I DM'd you at the same time as I had heard from somebody I work with who is older. He's in his 50s. And he pulled me aside one day and was like, MC, I know you're into Star Wars. And I'm like, okay, yes, I am. And he said to me, so I've recently finished Mandalorian Season 2, all of Clone Wars, Rebels, and the Bad Batch Season 1. And I'm like, wow, you had a binge fest happening. Not much on the schedule. I mean, COVID, everybody's going through different things and they deal with it in different ways. And he's like, I have a question. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, is Dave Filoni stuck in a rut? And I said, yes. And his reasons were because Bad Batch Season 1, it has almost the same form and characters as Clone Wars Season 2, and a similar approach to Mandalorian Season 2. And I said, yep. I mean, it's the same food delivered in the same way without even being treated in a different lens.
Yeah, I think Dave Filoni is stuck in a personal rut with his storytelling, and then Star Wars is stuck in a Dave Filoni rut. And the two are they have the same effect, because Star Wars TV until a few weeks ago was just Dave Filoni TV. Like, there was, before Visions, there was nothing that was, and still there's nothing kind of canon mainline Star Wars content that is not a Dave Filoni in one way or another, his thing. And I think Dave Filoni is a good storyteller, and I think he's got a nice vision for Star Wars, but I don't want Star Wars to just be his vision. And I think that is, at the moment, all they seem interested in giving us.
So that is one issue that has been developing, and maybe it wasn't a problem with Rebels, because Rebels was a lot braver with its storytelling, and yet still kind of did new things. Resistance itself was completely different, but it was like almost like they got scared of it.
Yes.
And then Mandalorian Season 1 had more time, I think, to be what it was going to be. Like, they worked on it longer before they presented it to us. Mandalorian Season 2 felt like an advertisement for other shows.
Yeah. That show, I was very excited by Mandalorian Season 1, and then just kind of had that knocked out of me by Season 2 every week.
Yeah.
And I know loads of people seem to be in the same situation, but it's I think,
and I don't
like
want it doesn't make me happy to be critical of these things, but I think that we must be at least defining where we need to be critical, so then we can also help and state literally what we think needs to be different.
Yeah.
And that'll be very clear, I think, once we get into the projects.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like it comes. I don't take much joy being grumpy about Star Wars, but at the same time, it's not like, oh, it comes from a place of love, I know better. But at the same time, like I do think that it's important to look at the things that we really care about and be like, what's going on here? I think, not necessarily being entitled, but thinking critically about the stuff we're consuming. I think it's good.
I used to be like a super advocate of story parallels following similar tropes and ideas. And with Star Wars Visions, I've decided that as long as thematically Star Wars is on the same sort of concept, it doesn't need to follow the same structure at all.
Yeah.
And Star Wars Visions, especially deep diving into it, which I had done in the last week of September or just after it came out, it really helped me be like, I'm done with the Skywalker saga, because everything inevitably leads back to Luke or leads back to dust. And I'm going to define that for a second. So everything needs to be about Luke. It doesn't matter if Cassian Andor is having his own story and his own plot and his own thing. All it leads back to is Luke blowing up the Death Star in A New Hope or the end of Return of the Jedi. It doesn't matter if Obi-Wan has his own story.
No.
It all leads to the same place, which in turn leads to the fall of Kylo Ren, the rise of Rey, the end where everything kind of ends up in dust and destruction in the rise of Skywalker. There is no hope for me personally at the end. I don't find the rise of Skywalker a hopeful ending. I find it a reset ending. There's a variety of symbolic and story reasons why that happens. Go see Joe's video. To me, there is not a transcendent ending to Star Wars in the saga. So anything that is set to that point breaks it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like anything matters because it's all tastes like dust in your mouth when you think about the story.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of putting it. When like anytime I'm reminded of something that I love about the sequels or about those characters, I'm just kind of reminded of the end point and the kind of the meaninglessness of everything, and I'm just like, oh, why should I mean, I do care about The Last Jedi, but why should I?
Yeah.
And I think that's it's a sad place to be, and yeah, I understand that taste in your mouth with every project that kind of inevitably leads into Rise of Skywalker, leads into Luke Skywalker, and yeah.
Yeah, like even the Bad Batch with the cloning. And although I loved the character choices, I loved the animation, I loved the music, I loved the sound design, I loved everything about the Bad Batch, the choices that they were making with the story, like really interesting. It's all tempered with, I've seen this before, and it leads to Luke or it leads to the rise of Skywalker. Even directly with the cloning and like the choices that are being made inside of the story. So it's like, I've stopped caring. And like, I hear this more and more from people on the internet that like literally people have started to hate Luke Skywalker. He's turning into a pop culture villain because people don't want to hear about him anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a real shame because I think he's a lovely character and he's great and I love him. But also, like, if I see him in anything, I'm just like, oh, it's that guy again. Like,
yeah,
he ruined Mandalorian. I remember him. So I think it's annoying for multiple reasons. Obviously, for what the kind of symbol of Luke Skywalker is starting to represent, and also the kind of loss of this character that means a lot to a lot of people. And I think, my own relationship with the character is changing because of how he's being used in what I consider, the wrong way.
There's actually a concept, and I've talked about it on the show before, and it's okay if you're not super aware of it, but it's actually called The Medium is the Message. And it's from Marshall McLuhan, who was a sort of communications and technology philosopher about how we communicate and how even if a fictional work, which is trying to communicate in a particular way, communicates exactly what they're trying to say. The fandom conversations, fan fiction, fan art, Twitter, YouTube, are actually all part of the story and the message that is being communicated. You cannot separate those two things. Star Wars Galaxies is part of the medium and the message that is being communicated. Every angry YouTuber, Tumblr posts, like, this is all part of the message that is being communicated, because to our psyche and to our brains and how we consume media, there is no difference in the message, because this is like, it speaks to like the very base part of our brains, and this is mythological in how it communicates to us. And we consume all of these transformational concepts in addition to the core message. Our brains can't tell the difference between somebody's cool edit, like with set to music of the throne room scene that changed the music, and the actual presentation of the movie itself. And Star Wars needs to understand that and then be very, very clear with what it's communicating.
Yeah. I think
because also their Twitter posts are part of this. Yes. What they advertise, what they say is also part of this. And so it complicates everything.
Yeah. It's I think there's a lot, isn't there, of just I think I definitely consume more people talking about Star Wars than I do Star Wars at this point. And the fact it's all linked, and it's impossible to look at one through a vacuum and in a vacuum completely of just, I can't separate that in my head. And I think that's why Luke Skywalker, I hate him, even though, when I watch the films, I'm like, I love this guy.
Yeah, he's my Luke. Like, even when he showed up on The Mandalorian season 2, I was really emotionally confused, because that's my Luke. He looked like my Luke, right? With his lightsaber and the look of him and what he was wearing. It was like he hadn't showered or changed his clothes, but he's a farm boy, so maybe he hadn't. But he looked like my Luke that I grew up with. Return of the Jedi is my first Star Wars, right? So, but it was weird, and the choices that he made were weird for me. So unless there's a reason for that, I don't know. It felt weird, and I try to accept the story as it's being presented, and then just sort of say, like, this worked for me if this didn't. Because I'm never going to be on the internet and be like, I hate you creators. But it certainly does, because that's not, I don't hate any creators. They're creating a story, right? I just hope that it's explained where he's at and why he's there, other than, oh man, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau really liked playing with their Luke Skywalker toy. That's what
it feels like at the moment, and I'm ready to be ready to be proved wrong at any point. But I think that was something that they said when they were making the first season. They were like, the reason we made it IG-11 instead of IG-88 is because people have their own mental versions of IG-88. They have their versions that they played with as kids, and with this one, it's a completely new character that we can do whatever we want with. And that was something that I could really get behind in Star Wars. And then in season 2, for that to just be, let's bring in Clone Wars character, let's bring in Aftermath character, let's bring in Luke Skywalker,
Boba Fett,
the main character of Boba
even
Fett,
though I would argue that Boba Fett's introduction has been more successful than others.
Yes, I almost forget that he's not just a Mandalorian character at this point. Because I think, to me, that's when I was never a huge Boba Fett fan. So to me, this is kind of how the character has been defined on screen for the first time. And I think that I forget that he's in the original trilogy at this point, because I like his characterization a lot. But at the same time, he's not all I want to see forever. So there's an important line there, isn't there?
Yeah. And also, like, he now has comics that are canon, right? That show him to be quite a ruthless person, even though he has been woobified in the Clone Wars as this baby who has had a hard life. So these two things exist. This awesome, badass Boba Fett and this baby Boba Fett exist in the same universe, and both truths are the same. And then we get another version of him in the Book of Boba Fett, which we have yet to see, as well as in Mandalorian Season 2, that will further complicate the conversation, because everybody's own Star Wars depends on the Star Wars that they have consumed, and then the Star Wars that they consume on top of that analyzes that Star Wars. Because who you listen to and how you sort of get a feedback loop of Star Wars. So, hey, fan art, anything like that, YouTube videos, podcasts, also contributes to how you view about it. Either you agree or you don't agree, and then it reinforces your own belief structure about what you've seen. Oof.
Yeah.
This is a mess. Oh my God. Yeah. I don't wish this on anyone. And yet some of my favorite creators that I've spoken with over the years are in the thick of this.
I think it's the more you kind of analyze the mess, the messier it seems, of just like there's so much going on, and it's obviously the solution is not just a simple kind of do this and then we're fine, because the problem is so complicated and so kind of personal for each person. Like, you know, everyone's going to want something slightly different from Star Wars. So I think their own idea of, you know, how to move forward is going to be dependent on that. And I think that's something that Star Wars needs to consider, that people, you know, they love Star Wars for different reasons, and they are looking for different things to get out of it.
Yeah.
And, it makes it incredibly complicated. But I do think there are ways that they could move forward in a better way than how they've got planned.
How they're currently doing it.
Yes.
I do not hold it against any of the story group people that are publicly on Twitter that have said, who a few years ago said canon is king, and now say, what canon? I don't blame them at all. Honestly, if I was in this situation, I would also throw canon out the window and just say, all stories are true.
Yeah, I think
it would make things easier for many people, and it would become more of like a Marvel type style of storytelling.
I was really enjoying the kind of the canon situation.
I was as well.
And I usually don't care about that kind of thing. I think I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and Doctor Who does not have a canon. It, like, everything is canon, nothing is canon. Like, whatever you want is kind of what has happened. Like, these characters have met the same historical figures 5 times for the first time. And so I think I never, like, whenever someone gets into that with Doctor Who, I'm like, oh, you know, that's not what this is. But with Star Wars, it really felt like, and I don't know, this is, you know, my nerd brain usually does not work like this, but it felt like everything mattered because everything was canon. And you know, you could read a comic.
Well, they said that.
Yeah.
They said it when they decanonized the expanded universe, right? They said, oh, these are now just legends.
Yeah.
Right? They said there is going to be things that matter.
Yeah.
And Pablo has clarified that to say there are things that matter from you can put them on a timeline perspective. Okay. That's interesting.
Me, like, when I got into it, it was really exciting to be like, oh, this comic character, they could feasibly show up in the next novel that I read, or, you know, potentially a TV show, maybe not. But I think when I read Last Shot and what is her name? The Han fake wife character. She showed
Sana.
up. Yes,
Sana.
Yes, she's wonderful. And when she showed up in that, I was like, "Oh, that's good." You know, I know who she is. I've read the comics, but it was just nice to have that kind of, you know, complete universe. And I think to then take that and be like, now it's all up to your interpretation. You know, you know, it's a lot more loose than just a strict canon. I think that's a bit of a shame.
So I had problems with the sort of switch that happened. They pulled a switch after the Rise of Skywalker because they realized, oh, this is broken. They realized it was broken. I do believe that they understood that, which was when things are canon, quote unquote, it means they matter. And so when Reylo says this thing is canon. Look, they kissed. It's not up to interpretation. It literally happens on screen. And that's used to be the order of operations. It happens in the movie. Oh, it happens in the television shows. Oh, it happens in the novels. Oh, it happens in the books. Oh, and it happens in the comic books. There was an order of operations of how true things were.
Visual dictionaries at the bottom, ready to be contradicted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And any sort of guides to the galaxy, Women in the Galaxy, any of the sort of things. And that doesn't even account for unreliable narrators, which happen in some of the guides. I'm looking on my shelf.
It's Legend of Luke Skywalker is not a guide, but it's something.
The Secrets of the Jedi is written from Luke's, it's a journalistic idea, but it also has an unreliable narrator in the fact that Luke himself doesn't have all the answers, but is only judging things from his own perspective. So not unreliable, but certainly biased. Legends of Luke Skywalker actually is actually my favorite Star Wars publication.
Right. I've never got around to it. I think I'm not sure the audiobook is available on the UK version of the Audible store. So I may have to find a way of listening to that, because that's how I consume all my Star Wars novels, is through the audiobooks, and
which is a perfectly awesome way to. There's sound effects and music. It's awesome.
I listened to a different book, and I was just like, Where's the Star Wars music? Where's the lightsabers? This is just someone reading the book. This is rubbish.
How dare they? Yeah, I'm trying to consume the Wheel of Time. Well, just the first one, the Eye of the World or whatever, just so I'm prepped for the first season of the Wheel of Time. And oh my goodness, I'm wow, it's just this guy talking. Crazy.
Where's the spice? Where's the flavor?
Where's the flavor? No, Legends of Luke Skywalker is not only one of my favorite audio novelizations, just because of the performances done, but also the story itself falls into sort of the same things I love about Visions. And it is technically canon in that the people telling the story exist.
Yeah.
And what they are doing exists, but it's a frame story like the Canterbury Tales.
Yes.
It's about people telling stories about Luke. And
it's a great setup. It's a fantastic idea to tell these stories that kind of exist in universe. It's one I wanted to try, but you may have convinced me to track it down.
Okay, so read it and then listen to my interview with Ken Liu, the author.
Okay, all right,
and then listen to my Star Wars as a mythology conversation with him that we did 8 months later.
All right,
and both of those are so solid. Okay, so. We've laid out a lot of problems that, yes. I mean, just the structure of the internet is one of the problems that Star Wars is dealing with. And other franchises seem to deal with it better. I don't know why Star Wars 100% can't seem to grasp that the internet exists.
It's very strange. Even other franchises under Disney are doing 10 times better jobs. So I don't know where the missing link is there, but it's very strange.
Yeah, I don't know, but I did want to talk about sort of what are the things we see needing to be fixed to pull them out of where they're at, right? Because I would say, arguably, the Clone Wars did a lot of heavy lifting for people to love Attack of the Clones. Right? So it's not impossible for them to iterate their own story and to fix it. And maybe I don't want to focus too much on the Skywalker saga unless there's something specific that you want to point out that you think could help.
No, I don't. Skywalker saga feels untouchably kind of messy at the moment. And right. I think as a kind of a successful franchise, it's probably best that they look at other areas to kind of at least improve people's perception of Star Wars before they touch any of the...
Before they come back and are we're going to kind of tweak this story a little bit with a show or another movie to make people understand what we were really trying to say. Because handing over whole hog the last Skywalker saga movie to J.J. Abrams seems to have caused problems.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dig into. I'm only going to focus on 5 confirmed projects right now, and we'll discuss them and kind of talk about whether we think we have the potential, what we think we're going to see. Let's start out with Rogue Squadron, which is Patty Jenkins. It's the first full Star Wars movie we're going to see post The Rise of Skywalker. What do you think this is all going to be about?
I don't know. I know there's a lot of stuff about when it's going to be set, and I think that
the rumor is that it's after The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, that seems simultaneously. I would like to get content after The Rise of Skywalker, but I think at the same time, bringing in conflict right after the war ends is quite a strange
Mixed
thing to
message.
do. Obviously, yeah,
like even like, oh yeah, the war is over. It's like, is it? And I've always been like, is it? And this would be just like, well, the war never ended. Look at that.
Even the
check mark Marie-Claire.
Even the start of the Lego thing that came out, there's Poe fighting TIE fighters after Rise of Skywalker. I'm like, oh yeah, that war still going on, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, that ending didn't matter. Maybe they're just setting our expectations for the fact that they know that they didn't actually do it well.
Yeah, but I think the description here is that it's a new generation of pilots, but that could be anything. There could be a new generation at any point in the Star Wars timeline. But this doesn't really interest me a huge amount conceptually, and I think maybe I just don't know enough. But to me, it seems like it's going to be kind of Rogue One third act into a whole movie, and I love the Rogue One third act, but I think you can't really, I don't know how you can, as a follow-up to, the sequel trilogy, get us kind of back invested in this universe like this. I think this is something that feels very safe. It's very, what do people like about Star Wars? X-Wings,
Yeah.
That's the solution then. I think it's quite a close-minded. I might be wrong. It might be my favorite Star Wars movie ever, but I don't know. Where are you at with it? Yeah.
I don't like ships.
No.
No, I mean, like, okay, so that's a big lie, because I do like ships that have symbolic meaning to them. So as an example, like the Silencer and the Whisper, and even the command shuttle looking like a bat or like some sort of like demonic chariot. Like that, I like it when ships have some sort of symbolic meaning. Even the Millennium Falcon has a lot more oomph to it, individually. But just seeing like ships fighting, right? There has to be some sort of like, I'm fighting this war because X, right? Like we don't fight wars because they must be fought. Nobody does that. They just like, we know that in real life. And so this is like, wars aren't just fought because they must be fought. They're fought for, patriotic reasons, or they're fought for, I must protect my family, or I must protect this concept or this ideal. I think generally speaking, like just to wrap up Rogue Squadron, it's too much like the Skywalker saga to me and not enough different, in my opinion. Yeah.
I think I struggle to get excited about the spaceships. I think that's not what I'm after in Star Wars ever. I think it's...
what are you after in Star Wars? So maybe we can frame it a little bit better.
I think characters. I mean, that's a very basic answer, but that's really all I care about.
It's what we fall in love with, right? Like,
I think
there are cool aspects. It's the trimmings. Like the ships, how they get there is the trimmings. But the truth is, it's the character conflict and the journey and the growth, or the challenges that they're going through, that draws us in.
And I know a lot of people, they love the kind of specifications of each fighter class and that. But to me, that's kind of the last thing I think about when someone mentions Star Wars. Like I'm thinking about Rey, I'm thinking about Luke, I'm thinking about Ben Solo, and then I have to kind of be reminded that they fly about in spaceships and they use lightsabers, because I think that's what I'm most engaged in. And when I remember stories, I don't really remember the kind of individual steps along the way of a narrative. I just remember
You don't like a plot summary? You don't think about Star Wars as a plot summary?
Yeah, I just like to look at the films as timelines of bullet points of events, and just go, oh yeah, no, I've experienced that film now. No point watching it. I know what happens. I know that they go to X planet to do X thing.
Sorry, we're on the same page, because there was like this weird, like, I don't know, somebody was tweeting about how plot is the only thing that matters when you're speaking about a narrative, and I just, it's so ridiculous to me to think about things as just the summary that you get at the start of a Star Wars movie. You could just watch that and go home.
Yeah.
And instead of like the experience of the emotionality that is the result of all of the plot, the characters, the acting, the symbolism, the music. Like, it's all psychological, and it all threads together into a tapestry, and the experience of it sits on top to tell us something that is transcendent above the Star Wars movie.
It's like when people were suddenly saying that The Force Awakens was exactly like A New Hope, I was like, was it? I had a very different experience with that movie. Like, and then kind of as it's broken down into bullet points, and you can compare the two as just a series of things that happen, and there's nothing beyond that as far as characters go or themes, or there's nothing else. Then yeah, they're the exact same movie, but it's like that's not what storytelling is. And I mean, obviously, I think it's a bit cynical. It's a bit of a kind of let's do the safe kind of blow up the big thing, and I'm critical of J.J. Abrams for that, but I don't think that the experience I get from that movie is defined by the Wikipedia plot synopsis.
Yeah, it also comes from a different lens, by just changing the main character's perspective, being that it's not Luke and it's somebody else, and they have different life experiences, and they're drawn to different things, and they have a person that is interested in them from more than just I am your father. It automatically changes the whole narrative and the emotionality and the meaning behind it, which is, why do we tell stories, Joe? It's to understand truths about our world, to be entertained, and to give us something to like think about. Not just, hey, this thing happened.
It's like, woo, I love things happening. No, it's, I think, often a dismissed part of the storytelling, but to be the most important thing. And that's when I look at the upcoming slate, I'm like, will I get much out of this on that level? And I hope so. And I go into everything with an open mind, but at the same time, the projects that we do know about are not, they don't sound like they'll speak to me and what I'm after.
All right, let's move on to Taika's 2025 or 2027 they're estimating.
Yeah.
What we know is there was like a Star Wars logo that was like made out of rock and something that looked maybe like the Mortis planet crashing into a planet.
So we know loads. We can build a synopsis out of that.
I can imagine what it's going to be.
No, I think this is one of the things that I'm excited about, because it's a creative voice that is not it's not Dave Filoni, it's not Jon Favreau, it's not someone who's told. I mean, he's directed Mandalorian episodes, but I think he, hopefully, as a writer and as a storyteller, he will bring a kind of a unique perspective to Star Wars. And based on his other films, I think it's one that I'll probably like. As an experience. It's impossible to say whether it will be the kind of Star Wars experience I'm after, but I think it's probably going to be good, because I think I like all of his films, and I love a lot of them.
So what I'm there's a couple of things that I'm excited about. The fact that it looks like it's old, right? It's older or beyond the scope of our time mentally, means it's all fresh slate to me. Yay.
Yeah.
Something completely new characters to fall in love with, and perhaps a new beginning to what we think we need to care about.
Yeah.
And that's like beyond even, Knights of the Old Republic or Old Republic time frame, beyond the Jedi and Sith split, maybe even before the beginning of the Jedi. Or even the Force, which would also be like, is this the beginning of everything? Like, whoa, that would be really cool. But what I love about Taika is that he is all three. He is a director, he's an actor, and a writer. And so he not only can picture what the actors are giving him, but he can work that logically through all of the different frames of like, hey, the actor is giving me this. I see this from a director's perspective, and this reflects what I was meaning to say. And it's like a holy trinity of creative awesomeness that we actually don't get with any other director that we've had in Star Wars.
No, I think, Rian Johnson and George Lucas are the writer-directors of Star Wars. They're the people that kind of, they write it and then they bring their script to life. But, the acting side of it and the kind of that understanding of the performer is something that I think Taika does really well. And, in all his projects, they are incredibly kind of collaborative with every aspect of it, because I think he understands everything so well. I'm excited for him for a lot of reasons, and I think there's for starters, I don't think he's someone who, when he thinks about Star Wars, cares too much about the Luke Skywalker. He doesn't seem like someone who will obsess over, I love Darth Vader's TIE fighter. I don't think that's kind of what he thinks of when he spoke about the Mandalorian. He seemed to really be on a kind of more thematic,
different plane,
holistic kind of looking at the saga, which I love. And it's kind of similar to what Rian Johnson saw when he speaks about Star Wars. He doesn't kind of fixate on the individual kind of aspects. He talks about the whole thing and what it means, not in a pretentious way, but in a just kind of, he's interested in the world of Star Wars more than
it's almost interested, like he's in the how, not the what.
Yes, I think, that's exactly
it. And that to me is exciting.
Yeah.
Because it'll give us a different set of like lenses and frames to view the story in, and also his experience as a he's not a white dude. Right? Telling,
that helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
Telling stories. Sorry to both of us white people that are talking about Star Wars, but no, I just want more of that. I want more diversity, and him being tapped for this makes me really excited, especially after I just finished The Hunt for the Wilder People, which is essentially like Robert Bly and the like mythic poetic men's movement on screen.
It's that's a wonderful film, and I think that's the kind of emotional, character-driven storytelling that I think people who've just seen Thor Ragnarok don't know Taika is capable of. They're like, oh, he did the funny Thor movie. It's like, yeah, but he also did he did the funny vampire movie as well. But he did the beautiful one with Sam Neill. And I think that's what I'm kind of most excited about. And when I think about what he can bring to Star Wars, I look at kind of all the aspects of what he's done so far.
Yeah.
I think, so as far as projects go, this is, I think, because I know that this is definitely happening, this is my my most anticipated.
Yes, this is my most anticipated one as well. Just because it'll be so different, and also it'll be funny like Star Wars can be, because I know he'll put funny in there because he can't avoid it, because it's part of who he is. And it will be, he understands psychology so well. So even Thor Ragnarok understands trauma and healing from trauma.
Absolutely.
And like, it's all just, it's layered in there. Even though it's the funny the funny Thor movie.
It is the funny Thor movie. Yeah, no, there's a lot
Yes.
going on in that movie as well. And I think, yeah, that's something I'm just so excited about. And hopefully it does, it inspires Lucasfilm to seek out, individual creative voices as, hopefully it makes them $4 billion.
Yes. All right, let's move on to Rian Johnson's Unknown trilogy that has been promised to us since The Last Jedi came out. I think he's going to finish Knives Out 1 and 2 and then come back and write it. Or he might be thinking about it while he's doing Knives Out, but it's definitely after Taika's movie, whatever Taika's movie is.
Yeah.
I will say he's coming back until I'm told otherwise.
Yeah, I'm constantly on a kind of I can't decide whether this is happening or not, because every time I think, oh yeah, no, it will. That they have to do it. It's the right thing. Look at Ryan's success. Look at Knives Out. Look at the deal he's made there with Netflix. There is more to him in Star Wars, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, but it's Disney, it's Lucasfilm. Look at what they've done so far. So every time I get my hopes up, I have to kind of bring them down, because I am a massive Rian Johnson fan. And,
yes,
I
saw, you've done some analysis videos. You've got other stuff going on with that. I want to. In an ideal world, I would want to give him something meaty like the Jedi-Mandalorian War, or the Jedi and Sith split, where there's lots of thematic things that he actually laid the groundwork for inside of The Last Jedi. The Jedi and Sith split is specifically the one that I would want to see him do a trilogy on, because he could tell it so well, and it would give us a lot of meat to dig into from character, because the thematic things that are going on in the galaxy being reflected in the characters that are being brought to the forefront, especially if it was some sort of the Jedi and Sith split over romance, would be just, I would die. It would be amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then he knows the themes of Star Wars well enough to embed them in the symbolism that is presented. So it would give me whenever I watch one of his movies, I end up getting dreams the next night, because I'm it's speaking to something in my brain that I can't it's because of the visual symbolism and other things that are happening from a story perspective. I have crazy dreams. And I know I'll get that when I watch it.
No, there are so many. I think he's so, it's not in a bad way, but he's very detail oriented when it comes, not necessarily in a lore way, and not a kind of ship specifications and names and things, but he's always kind of placing things on such kind of, I think he's got everything mapped out in his head as far as character arcs, and to him they're so obvious, and it's just about kind of meeting those kind of points along the arc in just the right moment, in just the right way, and with just the right amount of kind of symbolism to kind of tie it into the story of the whole,
and to layer it above just the plot point, but to give it that a visual meaning at the same time as the music is doing something, as the same time as something else is happening. It gives us way more to dig into psychologically.
Yeah, and I think just as well as him, he's got he's got Steve Yedlin, who is always his director of photography, and they work together to make such kind of visually just stunning but also meaningful shots. And
master of color theory himself.
Yes, his cousin Nathan Johnson has done the music for all of Ryan's films other than the Last Jedi, and I think it would be great to hear Nathan Johnson tackle it as a Star Wars score. So everything is in place for it to be just a fantastic
Rom as well, right?
Yes, Ron Bogman. Yeah, he's so and the way he speaks about The Last Jedi is so thoughtful for a kind of to me, my idea of what a producer is one thing, and then I see how he talks about The Last Jedi and how kind of engaged he is in the story, and it's just seems like the kind of perfect group of people to make Star Wars stories, which is why whenever I think about it, I'm like, I can't get too excited. I could be let down. I could be I could have my dreams crushed, but it's
just penciled in for me until confirmed, or are denied, and then I will move on with my life accordingly.
Yes.
I will mourn if it is denied, and then I will be very happy. And don't worry, What the Force will have lots of meat to dig into with anything Rian Johnson. All right, let's talk about the controversial Kevin Feige Star Wars movie, which will be written by Michael Waldron. And I have points on this.
Okay. Do you want to go first? Because I feel like I don't have an opinion on this.
Okay. Michael Waldron is one of my favorite writers now. And I didn't realize I needed him in Star Wars. And I was very critical of this concept like a year ago. But now that I've seen Loki and I understand his background with Rick and Morty, which is also brilliant, but just in a different way, he gets romance, and so does Kevin Feige. What? Yeah. Where are we? What year is it? Who are these people? I trust Kevin Feige and Michael Waldron more than I trust J.J. Abrams. What is going on?
It's a strange world.
I know, but Michael Waldron, like especially how he tweeted about Loki, the thoughtful interviews that he's given, the understanding of the psychological things that were going on. I think Michael Waldron was a big Last Jedi fan, because all of that visually came through inside of it. And if it wasn't there from the script, it was like Kate's choice and from a director's perspective. And I actually think it was there established from Michael and the story room that was created. And his story room in itself was incredibly diverse and awesome. So he understands story and he understands how to bring in diverse thought into that.
Yeah. I think I adored Loki. I think it was, it's the best thing Marvel have put out in a long time. It's the best, I think I'm looking forward to rewatching it. It's one that I wanted to make a video on. And then when it was revealed that it was just a season 1 of at least 2, I was like, I'll wait and see how this goes. But I'm just really excited for that. I think when we heard about the Kevin Feige Star Wars movie, we just kind of thought, what? Because that's such a kind of weird thing to announce, like, especially as a project, to just go kind of...
Kevin's working on a movie. It's like...
It's like, okay.
What?
Fine. It's like Kevin Feige has produced so much and such a wide range of things that it's like, it's hard to pinpoint what a Kevin Feige produced Star Wars movie will be. And then I think that it's starting to take shape with Michael Waldron on board, and I think I have more faith in the project now than I did. But it's still, to me, we
should have done like what is it like? When you invest in the stock market, you like put faith in like how much you put faith in a project, and like that, like over under odds of this actually becoming awesome, like. It feels like we're kind of doing that.
It's on track to surprise a lot of people, I think. But it's
the only negative thing that I was worried about was because of how Kevin talks about Star Wars, right? But I think with the right vision from a writing perspective, who understands theme and character and isn't afraid of telling weird friggin' story, like Loki is weird. Like it could have gone weirder, but it is weird and it is brave. And if Kevin's like, Michael, he's got some stuff, and I'll be like, yes. Especially Kevin was the one who made the overt romantic choices by choosing the songs for the show too. Like, I have a lot more like, where are we? Again, I'm confused. I'm like, like it's the meme from Hot Ones with Paul Rudd. Like, who knew we would be here? Not me.
Not me. No, it's I think, I really like where the Marvel Cinematic Universe seems to be going project-wise. It seems to be taking these characters in directions that differ from the expected, but do line up with kind of where the narrative should take them. And it's so refreshing to look at their slate and see like a kind of a diversity of voices and genres and characters. And I think it's this year have started, I think I realized that I was way more excited about the future of Marvel than the future of Star Wars. And I think Kevin Feige clearly is doing something right. I mean, he speaks about Star Wars in the kind of a way that feels very familiar. But at the same time, the way he speaks about his storytelling and the way he speaks about the characters leading things, when it comes to Marvel, hopefully he can bring that to the galaxy far, far away. But it's
in understanding how the story needs to build upon itself. I would say the only misstep was putting Black Widow after Endgame rather than before, and that's the only misstep that I have seen from a storytelling release perspective.
I think even then he was the Black Widow kind of concept was one that he was hoping for a while, but Ike Perlmutter at Marvel was very against a female
Ike
movie. So I think even then, the Black Widow movie, I didn't love it, but I think I kind of write it off as just like that was tied up with years of trying to get it made and having that backlash. So I think it's fingers crossed going forward, Marvel is being in safe hands, and hopefully that will be brought over. But we'll have to see, because to me it's still just something that I can't wrap my head around, because announcing it as just this producer from this series that's completely different, he's producing a Star Wars movie and it's coming out at some point. It's like, okay, what is it?
I was very critical of it, as much as I was as critical of the Game of Thrones, but producers coming in. I'm more interested in this with Michael Waldron's name being attached, and now seeing what he's doing, and then taking on Multiverse of Madness, which will be deeply psychological and character driven. It can't help but be that way. And it looks like every Marvel movie in Phase 4 has an aspect of character deep stuff they're going through, in addition to telling something that is deeply mythological too, the Eternals, even what is going to happen with what looks like probably the Sinister Six more and more, with No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home. All of these things seem to be and because it's going into the concepts of nothing is real and everything is real, it ends up becoming psychological, and they have to play within that world. And so this brings me a lot of hope, personally. Yeah.
And I think another thing about Phase 4 is just the romances. There are loads. There's so much love.
I didn't even mention that. There's so much love. And that's so... It feels like we've been starved of it.
Yeah. It's really refreshing just every time there's a new project. And, it's especially Loki, where I think I'd been so burned in the past. I was like, I'm enjoying the show. It'll be cool if this was a romantic thing. Probably won't be. And I was like, they are. This is happening. So I think that's, hopefully, Star Wars could have some more romance, because there's not enough. And there's not enough. If I
get to interview Michael Waldron, I'm going to ask what his favorite Star Wars movie is. And I hope it's The Last Jedi.
You have to, Until you find out for sure, you can just imagine that it is.
Yes, it is. He loves Rey, and he's a Reylo. We just know it, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably got good taste. So.
Yes, he's thoughtful enough to be a Reylo.
Yeah, that's the qualifications needed.
Okay, so let's talk about the last confirmed project I want to talk about that is outside of the Skywalker saga timeline. So that's the qualifier. Acolyte.
Yes.
I love Leslie Headland. I love how she thinks about Star Wars. I love that she is a queer woman's voice, right?
Yeah.
Out there. I loved Russian Doll so much. It was so Star Wars. Okay.
But.
No, there's no but.
No, there's no but.
Well, the but is it's the end of the High Republic, and so it's something connected to the downfall of the galaxy, which means it's going to have that dust on it, even if it doesn't mean to.
I think
that's sad.
It is, when they announced the kind of, it's set long before anything we know. It's like, all right, how long before? It's like, 70, 80 years before Phantom Menace. It's like, that's not that long. Like that's, I'm hoping it will feel completely detached, completely brand new, and its own story with its own kind of beginning, middle, and end, and not end on, and that's how we got to where we are today kind of thing, because
that led to the rise of Palpatine.
Yeah.
80 years before could be, if they ended up doing a couple of seasons, and that's how Palpatine was born.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, that's what you wasted like this brilliant storyteller on?
Yeah.
I want to throw my shoe.
I think it's going to be good. And I think that's something that I can hopefully just kind of say as a whole. It will be something that I enjoy, because I think it's ticking all the right boxes.
Yeah.
However, there is that potential for that kind of that aftertaste of just like, oh, that was so nearly the perfect project. But, hopefully it will be. I'm
going to love Kenobi because of the conflict and the character stuff that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to love Cassian because I love spy movies, and spy movies set in Star Wars. Like, that's something like, I'm like, yes,
I'm
give
the
me.
same with Andor. Yeah.
Yeah. But to me, it's like, I wanted this to be its own thing and to give us something that was unique. And I would actually be even cool if it was like, it happened to happen before the Skywalker saga by 70, 80 years, but then it affects something that is post the rise of Skywalker. I would say, like, let's just skip over the Skywalker saga and give us something that's like the next big thing. And I would be like, yes.
Yeah, that would be a worthwhile kind of use of that time period, as well as kind of laying the groundwork for future storytelling.
This is in the background, humming along the entire Skywalker saga, and then this is the thing that pops up after. Yes,
and gimme. The inspiration for the Death Star idea. I don't. That's like the most disappointing thing they could throw in. It's like, with this kind of power, maybe destroying planets is a possibility, and it's just, we know, we've seen it all play out.
There has to be something actually more horrific than destroying planets.
Yes.
Or more personal too, is also like, instead of going macro, go micro and tell things from that perspective.
It's so, I feel like I've become so desensitized to the whole planet blowing up thing.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, there were probably some people there. I didn't know any of them.
I would argue actually that's why the twins, from a Star Wars Visions perspective, is the least successful of the Star Wars Visions shorts. Because
that's interesting. Yeah.
It's too much of what we've already seen.
Yeah. I think I like the homages. I like the visual kind of references in that. It's
beautiful.
Story. But I think it's not one of my favorites. I do have a ranking somewhere, but I think it's somewhere in the kind of.
Why are you ranking Star Wars?
I can't stop.
Joe.
No, I just in my own head, the ones that spoke to me.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Okay. I'm teasing you.
Yeah,
all right, so those are the official projects. And Leslie, I probably need to do a Russian doll deep dive. So if you're ever up for that, Joe, I'm going to put it out there. You can join me in this and talk about Russian doll.
That,
yeah. But why it's super Star Warsy is because it takes the concepts of being separate, being in different directions, and brings them into a transcendent location. And then it's also reflected actually in the script, talking about solutions that are not this way or that way, but the middle path. And that's just like super Star Wars. And it's the Star Wars that is not overt. It's actually just in the text, and you have to like watch enough Star Wars to get it, or listen to enough George Lucas interviews. Or enough Joseph Campbell interviews too. You'll get it that way, because that's the Mask of God stuff. Yeah. Okay. So things that haven't necessarily been confirmed, but there's been groundwork laid in the story. Let's move on to that. So the beginning of the Force or the Jedi.
Yes. That's a big one.
I mean, do you think that this story needs to be told?
I don't think it needs to be told. I don't think it's, I'm not clamoring for an explanation from a kind of, I guess, a lore perspective of like I need to know the details. But I think at the same time, I think it's one that, if told, could be fascinating and could be just such a pure reflection and depiction of what Star Wars is. And, because it is literally taking it right to, the most spiritual, the most kind of, and I guess, the Force, it's always tricky to go into that on any kind of scientific level. Midichlorians didn't go down too well, but I think to kind of get into it from a psychological and mythological, and just wrap that all up in a kind of character-driven story rather than a kind of microbiology story, would be, I think there's so much potential there for a really fascinating and engaging Star Wars, if not like the purest Star Wars, but it would have to be done by someone who could do it and not just make it kind of, look, it's awesome, look, the Jedi, look how powerful they are. I think that would be, or look how,
yeah. And something like I've spoken with Kevin Scott about, he talked about the dogma of the Jedi being indoctrinated because of how they interpreted things. And so it would take a very brave storyteller to strip away everything that we know about Star Wars and give us something else that has been around and transformed over millennia. Because you're not going to have people necessarily wearing robes. You might not necessarily have lightsabers. You might have people like wielding like sticks. Like, and it would be just like a very weird version. And I do think that it has the potential to be something that would be resetting our understanding of the spirituality of Star Wars that would enable them to take the story forward past the inevitable dust. But it would be like they'd have to go really, really far back in time to tell a story and then follow that up with something that was after the rise of Skywalker that tied into it to give us that echoed meaning through time.
Yeah.
Same with the Jedi and Sith split, I argue.
Yes. That more than anything would be a risk for Disney and for Lucasfilm, is to have a Star Wars movie or a Star Wars whatever that does not feature X-Wings, TIE fighters, lightsabers, Jedi, that we, as we know them. I think there's, it's a kind of double-edged sword of, that's a really exciting thing and people kind of would be interested in that. But at the same time, you can't put the familiar iconography on the poster. So
right.
I think it's something that as they are currently moving forward, I don't have the faith that they would do that, but I'd love to be surprised and I'd love to see something really, really tackle that.
Yeah. Specifically like with the Jedi and Sith or with the beginning of the Force and the Jedi.
I think the beginning of the Force and the Jedi would be the tricky one. The Jedi and the Sith, I think, once you put a bunch of red and blue lightsabers on a
people
thing,
get it, yeah.
People get it. I think that's a bit less of
and it's been in there
sell.
Since Rebels and since The Last Jedi. Like since the earliest Disney storytelling, they've been laying like breadcrumbs of this story.
Yeah.
I actually think what is happening is because like this is just my speculation. I actually think that they're going back in time. So they're going to tell stories about the Old Republic or the High Republic. They're going to tell stories about the Old Republic. They're going to tell stories about the Jedi-Mandalorian War, which is part of the Old Republic. They'll tell stories about the Jedi-Sith split, and then they'll tell stories about the beginning of the Jedi. And they'll lay the groundwork and introduce that next earlier phase before that. And then they're going to come back and save Ben Solo.
Wow. Yeah, I think that would be a good order to do things, I think.
Yeah, because then they could lay the groundwork, right? So the Jedi and Sith split, I think, is actually really, really important fundamentally to talk about how ideologies change. I recently consumed, and very quickly, Cobra Kai, which is more Star Wars than Star Wars.
Is it? I need to get to that. I've heard so much about it, and I'd love to dive in.
And I'm going to do a deep dive on it because I absolutely think that I need to before the next season comes out. But it understands transcendence of thought, it understands balance, and it understands that there is no good and bad. There's only sort of selfish and selfless, right? Yeah. And the approach by which you do those things, it means that you need to understand yourself first. It's really brilliant. And it understands the legacy of what they call the Miyagi-verse, which is the 4 Miyagi movies, the Karate Kid movies. It understands the Miyagi-verse as something from a legacy perspective that they can plug into thematically and understand the nostalgia, but don't need to repeat the things that were done before and can give it new meaning for a new generation.
That sounds good. That sounds like the right way of going.
It absolutely is the right way to go about it. But what is interesting is if you were to take like the Jedi and Sith split and understand what Cobra Kai has done with its story, you could tell a story that would have its own meaning as a prequel to like all of the terrible stuff that's in the galaxy and understand it. Like why are these things that started out as the same or balancing factors? Maybe it's something cool, like Jedi always walked in pairs and they were the attack version and the defense version, right? Because pairs are like super important in Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like those two people balanced each other out. And maybe they were a set of pairs that were out in the galaxy and it turned into Master and Apprentice in the new version because they still needed that pair. But it was this imbalanced version on either side. There's so many cool concepts that they could lean into that would plug more back into the yin and the yang and why these things exist and why they feel satisfying to have from a story element perspective.
No, I think that's, there are, you think of the idea of it, and I think maybe a lot of Star Wars fans, they go to a kind of a massive battle between, people with red lightsabers and people with green lightsabers, and, that's, hundreds of people on each side. But I think that getting into that initial kind of how did that come about? How did this develop as, two different readings of the Force, two different interpretations of balance? And I think there's so much you can do there. And it would be, make
it a romance that broke them up.
That would be great. I think people would hate that, but I would love it, so they should do it.
No, people will love it if it's done well.
Yes.
And it's new characters that not only the core story says this is what's happening, but all of the media around it. And it's very clear as everybody talks about it, this is what's happening. It works in Chinese media. They literally draw relationship charts and say, hey, this thing is happening, right? And then send it out. They did that with the Last Jedi to Japan with like heart, like Kylo and Rey, and like because that's how like Asian communities like talk about stuff, right? Yeah. And they're like, it's on the surface, it's part of the story. What are you talking about? Okay. Why are you confused?
They should do that then. They should make it completely not an explicit romance, but explicitly a romance. And I think that could I feel like once there's a hint of ambiguity, then the Star Wars fans start arguing. It'd be nice to not throw any bones to people who were against it.
And if they're just confused, you're like, here's the tweet from StarWars.com.
Yeah, so here's the director saying they're in love. Here's the writer. No,
it doesn't even like everybody said that about Rey and Kylo, so it's
no, that's true.
It doesn't even matter. The next explicit story element as we move forward in time was the Jedi-Mandalorian War, which has been explicitly mentioned in The Mandalorian, in Clone Wars season 7, and I believe it was mentioned as well as in Rebels, like one of the later seasons they talked about.
I think so. I think the Darksaber, once that's involved, there's all these implications.
And Mandalore being a person, right? Yeah. And all of those things.
Yeah, I think that would be a really kind of interesting. I remember there was talk of the Game of Thrones people maybe being the ones to do it, and I know that they're not involved in Star Wars anymore, and I think that's good. But at the same time, I think this is a time where you could maybe make it very grand and very, as well as personal, but kind of put a whole scale kind of war that does not just look like the same as the Galactic Civil War or the Clone War or the whatever the war is in the sequel trilogy that needs a name. But I think you could have this kind of
Yeah, I don't even know what it's called.
I don't think there is a catchy name for it. It's like the scuffle that they had over a few months.
Because it wasn't very long either. It's not like the 100 Years' War that we actually had as humans. We had 100 Years' War. Like, do people not realize we had 100 years where people were like, I'm sending my son, and I have been in this war, and my father and my grandfather and my grandfather's grandfather was in this war. Like, that's a war.
That's the kind of thing I'd like to see from the Mandalorian Jedi one, just a kind of seemingly endless conflict with so much kind of nuance, and I think there are so many stories you could tell within that tie into one another and tie into Star Wars as a whole, and it would kind of, because the way they talk about it, this doesn't sound like it's on the same level as the sequel trilogy, kind of over a year and a half, maybe. It seems like it had, it shaped the galaxy, and it shaped.
And they have artifacts from that time that were invented to stop Force users. What I want is this to be framed from the Mandalorian perspective and not the Jedi. And the Jedi are the bad guys.
Oh, that'd be great.
Right? I because they're either serving some sort of master that doesn't, it's maybe make it super feudal, right? So there's literal like lords who control different factions of the Jedi as part of a way to maintain political balance within the society, and the Mandalorians are their own and don't trust those friggin' wizards.
Why would you?
Why would you? Right? Yeah. But also you would get like court politics, potentially. You'll get actual Jedi in armor, which is like entirely my thing. I love it so much. And you would get the Mandalorians sort of perspective, because like one thing as well Cobra Kai taught me is like if you make the person you think is the bad guy the protagonist, then everything shifts lenses.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe you can understand their perspective better.
I think that would be a really great way to kind of tackle it, and to make it not another story about Jedi on Coruscant or wherever they are just discussing this enemy off in the distance like the prequels were and like the Clone Wars was. And I love elements of both, but I think to properly distinguish this from previous stories and previous wars that we've seen, there's a lot of potential there. And to see, because a lot of Mandalorian technology and a lot of the designs that we associate with Mandalore and the Darksaber and everything, it's a lot of it was made to combat the Jedi.
Yeah, exactly.
And to see them as this villain that needs all this preparation to defend yourself from is I think that would be a really, really cool way to do Star Wars. Absolutely.
We've had the announcement of the Knights of the Old Republic remake, which will be a story. And, this is kind of the first video gamey one that I've brought up in this list, but I'm really excited about it because I played both KOTOR 1 and 2 when they came out, and I love the storytelling behind it, and the fact that it's going to be a remake with an actual writer behind it tells me something, that they're going to potentially bring this into canon.
That's what I've been thinking as well. It's that would be very interesting to see this kind of formerly non-canon legend story, but I don't think there's a huge amount to contradict it either. But I think it'll be interesting how Lucasfilm approach this as a project, and as a do they do tie-in novels, do they do tie-in comics for the remake? I think there's stuff there. I have to admit I have not played through either game. I was not playing video games when it came out. I think I had been born when they came out, but I
oh, you're a baby. Okay,
probably only just and I think I'm going to wait until the remake comes out before I sink my teeth into that world.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges that the original faced was it didn't feel like it made it old enough, right? So it still felt like Skywalker saga age, like old ships.
Yeah.
Like everything kind of looked the same. And it would be really interesting if they took that lens and said, actually, this is so far back in history that visually it looks a little bit different too. That would be something I would like to see. Yeah. Additionally, the choice of gender and romantic sub-story that you end up getting ends up actually, the canon needed to make a choice, and they chose the male storyline and that romance because it was the most satisfying and frankly super friggin' Reylo.
I've heard.
And so if it is going to be canon, like not that I want the story to be stuck from a gender perspective. You can only play a dude or a woman through the story. That needs to be accounted for, because it seems like that was an important part of the story that they wanted to retain to tell other stories in Legends. Darth Revan being tied to a female Jedi was something that was super important. So perhaps they're going to expand the narrative choices that you as a man or as a woman could romance Bastila, which would also be dope.
Yeah, that'd be good. I can't imagine anyone on YouTube being angry about that, but
you know what? I'm here for it. I'll fight them.
Yeah. I think I'll join you.
It's also highly connected to the Jedi-Mandalorian War, because Revan is the one who ended it.
Yes, no, I heard that. I spoke with my friend about the KOTOR when they announced the remake. I was like, so what's the deal with it? And yeah, so it is tied into that.
Yeah. So it would be a good thing, like this coming out would be a good thing to lead into that from a storytelling perspective, to set hey, this is what's happening.
Yeah, it gets people, engaged with this period of the Star Wars timeline, and potentially establish the aesthetic, maybe, or at least sow the seeds for it. I think it's because it's a pretty high profile game release on the PS5 to kind of that announcement. I'm in both Star Wars circles and gaming circles, and it was suddenly in both, and it was filling up both parts of the internet that I see. So I think it'd be really cool.
Certain aspects of YouTube have problems with the writer who they've chosen anyways. So let's go full.
Yeah.
Let's make it as queer as possible, if possible.
I think, if people are going to be angry either way, double down. Just
make everybody angry. Let's do it and be brave, right?
Yeah,
and
I think,
you know what? It's going to find the right population.
I think that's exactly what Star Wars needs as a general attitude towards their storytelling, but also, just on an individual level with this project. I think that'd be great to get really brave and really kind of, double down on the things that people are accusing it of being already.
Let's just do it. Hey, you think we're SJWs or whatever? Let's be that. Yeah.
Why not be? It. If we're going to be ultra woke in your eyes, whether we just do a straight up adaptation or just a complete rewrite, why not? Why not make it ultra woke? Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So what are some other things that you think that we could add in to help dust off the asbestos dust that is currently covering the Skywalker saga?
I think, I know we haven't really discussed the specific kind of the stories, the upcoming projects that are within the Skywalker saga timeline. And I think there probably needs to be, as much as I'm excited for each individual one, there probably needs to be less of that. I think Star Wars fatigue as an idea, and as something that audiences may or may not experience at whatever point, I don't think it comes about just from having lots of a certain thing. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has shown that with 5 movies and shows every year. It's not that there's lots of it, it's that the thing that would get people to stop if it was all of the same, if it was just loads of, the same characters, the same style, the same, and I think the most important thing is the same creative voices. So to me, the best thing that Star Wars can do, maybe even taking a step back from within the story itself, is get the right people to tell them. Like, I think is, find people with a vision, a specific idea of what Star Wars is. I think that's why I love Visions so much, is that it really does just read as people having an opportunity to tell the Star Wars that they want to tell, with their versions of what, the iconography and the kind of themes and the visuals as well, of just kind of playing around in that Star Wars sandbox in a way that only they can do. And I think that's something that you lose if every story is a spin-off of The Mandalorian, helmed by one of The Mandalorian's directors, writers, producers, or, a prequel to Rogue One, or a kind of an in-between, prequel and sequel, original trilogy stuff. I think, so I would just like them to find these creative voices and let them tell these stories in whatever part of the timeline that they really feel like. I think is another thing. I think if maybe because Chloe Zhao, the director of Nomadland and The Eternals, she was recently asked, she spoke a lot about Star Wars in a recent interview she did, and they asked if she'd be interested in doing a Star Wars, and she said she would. It's a world that she loves and that has kind of been very formative for her.
I would love to see her vision of Star Wars.
And I think that looking at what she's doing with the Eternals and what she's doing with Marvel, and I love Nomadland when I saw that earlier this year, I think it would just be great to have someone like her take what Star Wars is to them and put that on screen for us, because then it forms for us what Star Wars is, because for me, I have a certain idea of what Star Wars is. I'm looking for certain things, and certain projects will scratch that itch and others won't. And right now it feels like only one specific type of fan is being catered to with the stories. It would be nice to have a bit more of an awareness of the kind of multifaceted nature of fandom and the generational aspect as well. Like, I did not grow up when the original trilogy was coming out. I did not, for me, I guess the sequels are my Star Wars. And I guess because of that, I would like Ben Solo to be alive again quite soon. So I guess that's one of the most important within the story decisions that they could make, is to bring Ben Solo back. And I spoke about that ad nauseum with the Reylo video, but it's I think it's just something that absolutely needs to happen. So fingers crossed.
Mythologically, actually, they've broken the story. So to not have him return as he represents a dying, resurrecting God. He died 4 times in the Rise of Skywalker and was resurrected every time. And he's died multiple times throughout his life, symbolically or otherwise. And so he needs to come back so that there is a transcendent outcome to the story, or love.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. That's truthfully the asbestos dust that's left on the Skywalker saga, which is all of the sacrifices, returning him to his mother, returning him to his loved one, is actually the most important thing that they are missing. Yeah. And that loved one is seeking him. So how would they do that? It'd be a lost husband story, similar to Psyche and Cupid, where he is gone. He is fled to his mother's house, literally in the world between worlds, or into the Force. And Rey, through all sorts of story awesomeness, goes and gets him back from the Force, from the underworld. This is so mythic and awesome, and literally is like the story of Anana grabbing her husband from the underworld, from her sister Ereshkigal in the underworld. Like, there are multiple lost husband stories that they could just plug into the Star Wars story and use, and it would psychologically tickle our cerebellums and the oldest parts of our lizard brains that we would be like, this is a satisfying story, and nobody would hate it.
I think it would be fantastic to see. I mean, people say that characters are kind of brought back from the dead all the time in Star Wars, and it's kind of true but the way they explain it with Maul and Boba Fett and all that is like, oh, they were never really dead.
They were always technologically brought back, right?
Yeah. It was like, oh, Boba, he actually survived. It wasn't like an actual resurrection and a kind of in the more kind of literal sense of being brought back from the dead. I think seeing that and kind of getting into that side of the Force and visualizing that side of the Force as well would be really cool. And the whole idea of becoming one with the Force, and what does that mean, and how does that look, and coming back from that, I think there are a lot of great story ideas that could be implemented with the future of Ben Solo, and I can't imagine really the future of Star Wars without the future of Ben Solo. And as much as I like seeing the kind of his past and seeing him as a little Lego man, I think
they can give us all of the painful past stories that they want if they fix him. Yes,
I think that's the important thing, and that's, to me, that's where everything it felt like it was leading, and obviously should have led, and to then have that maybe not necessarily stopped in its tracks completely, but at least finish at the moment on an incomplete part of the story, I think is incredibly unsatisfying, and it's the complete opposite of what Star Wars to me should be about and what stories should mean. And I think that's what has to happen for Star Wars to move on and to continue with the, I think anything that's post Rise of Skywalker, to me, I can't picture that without him factoring in at least somehow. And because as well, that's one of the, I'd say, two biggest failures of Rise of Skywalker. And the other is just, as we've said, was the war over? Did the conflict end? And it all kind of ties into each other, doesn't it? It's all the same mistakes feeding into the same problems. But just, I think another thing that would be important is to break the cycle of violence that DJ was talking about, that that's always been, you blow them up, they blow you up today, you blow them up tomorrow. That's how it is. It just keeps going like that. You've got the Star Destroyer crashing down on Jakku, the new one right next to the old one. It's like, great, we're just going to keep doing this every 30 years as we're going to, crash new capital ships on this same old planet, because the war will always happen. And I quite like the cyclical nature of Star Wars to an extent, but then when it's like this, it's so thoroughly hopeless that it's like it makes any victory completely meaningless.
I like my space fairy tale fantasy without the inevitable existential dread of the cycles of violence added on top, and that everything, if you are a chosen person of the fate and the Force, you cannot escape the inevitable bodily sacrifice that you'll need to make to throw yourself onto the pyre of what the Force demands of you. And you cannot have a happy ending. Well, that's actually what you need. You need to stop the Star Wars story at a happy ending somehow. That is the only thing that actually is required to fix the Star Wars. So they could even, I'm not saying it has to be Ben Solo, it could be the reincarnations of Ben and Rey in 1,000 years.
Sure.
And tell that story. They have the memories of Ben and Rey, they use those things, and then they fix it. It would be full genre bullshit that's brought into Star Wars, and I would love it to death, because then it's like people that kind of like are alternative versions of themselves fix the Star Wars.
The same eyes and different people,
same eyes, and which I totally thought they were doing something with, but they weren't. So sad. But you're right. This is what they need. They need to end the story on the happily ever after.
Yes.
And then they can put us through as much pain as they absolutely want to, and everything can be horrible, and we'll be like, you know what? ends up okay.
We know it's all right in the end. Yeah, I think, I can put up with a lot if I know that it's going to be all right eventually.
And it's the inevitability of where does the story stop? And if it's always going to be terrible, we're never going to love it. Because that's why they were successful in telling the prequels ending in destruction, even though there's a touch of hope at the end, was because it all led to the Yub Nub. And the new Star Wars one, which is like the celebration across the galaxy, because everything had meaning then.
Yes. And it was, I grew up with the special edition version with all the fireworks over Bespin and Tatooine, and I really liked that as an ending. And I mean that's not to say that when the sequels came along I was unhappy, because I was it was new Star Wars and it was great. And I hate when people say, to me that's when Star Wars ended with Return of the Jedi. But at the same time, it's like, I kind of wish it did at least end on the feeling that I had at the end of Return of the Jedi. And I think that would be lovely. And I think the Rise of Skywalker's equivalent of that, of just stuff on fire everywhere, we know, is like the exact opposite of Return of the Jedi in a way. I mean, I get not doing the exact same thing, but a party would be nice everywhere, actually.
Yeah. I think that there's something that we talked about before we started recording, which is like, plot and like how people get fixated on the what happens. And in so many ways, like that's how some of the story group thinks about stuff. What has happened in chronological order. But more important for me out of Star Wars stories specifically is how it makes people feel and the messages that they take home, which is not something that you can quantify by plot. No,
it's way more than that, and it's also less than that. It's more kind of pure, and you don't have to get bogged down in the kind of individual things. It's more of a vague, I mean, a vague feels like a poor word to use,
but it's deeply personal too.
Yeah, and I think that's how you touch people with the stories. It's not kind of showing them a cool thing, or having them go from one cool planet to another cool planet. That's not really what sticks with people. And I think it would be nice.
Well, people will buy that stuff either way, and you can still produce it. You can still produce I'm going to make a Jedi lightsaber in the Jedi workshop when I go to my theme park, and people will love that because it helps them think about the feelings that they had when they experienced the story. But the most important thing is to give something that produces feelings in people.
Yeah.
And allows them to take a piece of the story and what was being said home.
And there needs to be more to that feeling than just being reminded of how you felt when you watched the Death Star explode in 1977.
It has to say something that makes sense to the characters that are on screen telling that story, because that's how you make it iconic and lasting. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love The Last Jedi so much, is because of how it made me feel in the cinema as kind of, I grew up watching the first 6 Star Wars movies, but I was still a teenager when the sequels came out. So I was at the perfect age to be kind of watching this stuff and having it unfold as I grew up. And when I was sat in The Last Jedi and, the stuff with Rey and Kylo Ren was happening, I was just that was a moment for me. And I can kind of look back at that and how I felt. And it's kind of shaped what I'm looking for in both Star Wars and in general storytelling, because I felt kind of challenged and excited and hopeful. And I think, that's why I'm so passionate about Reylo, is because of how I felt watching that. And I think it would be a real shame to not prioritize that, that search for that feeling going forward, to then, it's not about recapturing the old feelings. It's not about kind of, reminding you how you felt when you had those feelings. It's about giving you kind of new feelings and giving children, the young people growing up with these stories, feelings beyond, you should go watch Return of the Jedi to know who this guy from The Mandalorian is, Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Joe, I think we have drained this topic
Yes.
And perhaps it is the most clickbaity topic I've ever done, which is how would we fix Star Wars, given what we know?
It's quite a weighty one, isn't it? It's quite yeah, but hopefully we've delivered on the clickbait.
Yeah, I never do clickbait, but here we go. But no, I actually do think that it was really important for us to go through and talk about, hey, what do we know, and what do we know needs to happen, because the story itself is broken and unsatisfying.
Yeah.
If you look at it as a whole mythic storytelling enterprise. Yeah. Oh. That was heavy.
It was, but I think we've got somewhere along the way to an answer of a solution.
And really, it's more diverse stories, fixing what is broken, and being brave and weird.
Brave and weird. That's all they need. Make it good.
Make it good, please.
That's what they should do. Send that to Lucasfilm.
And the postage stamp. Please make Star Wars weird again. Thank you. But I did want to put this out there because this is how I think about things, and this is what, classifying this as asbestos dust that has been left on the Star Wars Skywalker saga is like very visceral, and people can understand it when they start to think about how things kind of disintegrate as you get closer to the rise of Skywalker. But you were absolutely the right person to have this conversation with, Joe. So thank you so much for coming on here and telling me all your cool and amazing thoughts and coming along for the ride.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this discussion because I think it's one that I've been having in my head for years.
Yeah, me too.
And it's really nice to say it out loud, and to say it out loud with someone who seems to agree on a lot of levels about what makes a story satisfying.
Yes.
And, what makes the current situation so unsatisfying.
Absolutely. It feels very black and white when I think about it, and I'm not sure if it is for everybody. And maybe they just don't want to look at it too closely, because if they look at it, it becomes painful.
Yes.
Yeah. Joe, where can people find everything that you're doing online? And I'll link, of course, to your channel and to your amazing Reylo video, because I think that everybody should watch it. It is long, but so satisfying and amazing.
Yeah, you can find me in a lot of places now. I recently made one of those card things that show all the links, and I was shocked at how many there were. But I guess the main ones would be my YouTube channel. That is kind of where I tend to operate for the most part. And Twitter is where I'm most active. It's where I spend most of my day, seemingly against my own will, just attached to my phone. But so I guess at Joe_Brennan_ is my Twitter. And yeah, I'm starting a podcast quite soon. It's called Diving Into Why. It is, which sounds really philosophical, but it's actually just at the start of all of my videos, I say I'm going to dive into why. So it's just going to be me talking with a friend about stuff. So yeah, that's on all the platforms that you would expect a podcast to be. And the first episode is going to be about Marvel's What If, Star Wars Visions, all kinds of things that have come out recently. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Digging into the podcast world.
Yes. I mean, it's something I've wanted to do for ages, but it's...
and your Twitter is at Joe Brennan or at...
Yes. Joe_Brennan_.
Okay.
So it's someone took Joe_Brennan, and they don't use. It's not an active Twitter account, but so I really hate.
You and I have the same feelings because somebody also took What the Force, and it's not an active Twitter account. So this is the pain I feel.
Why are you taking it?
Yeah, but
not using it.
But Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show. I look forward to the next time I get to talk to you live. Whatever topic you have in mind, you're brilliant. And I wish you nothing but luck with your amazing podcast and your YouTube channel.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me again. It's been really fun.
Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Brad, Melody, Night Huntress in Wild Space, Felicia, How Rude, Anna Perez, Macau Mom, Neil, James, Joellen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, Scott C, and Susan. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. Check out our other channel on YouTube or other podcast feeds, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or our website, whattheforce.ca, or on our Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.